O divine will, bless us, increase your life in us, and bless me and help me to speak these truths in a way that you want. Amen. Fiat. My daughter, in the course of my mortal life, thousands and thousands of angels were the cortege of my humanity, gathering everything I did. My steps, my works, my words, and even my sighs, my pains, the drops of my blood, in sum, everything. They were the angels in charge of my custody and of paying me honour, obedient to my every wish. They would rise to and descend from heaven to bring to the Father everything that I was doing. Now these angels have a special office, and as the soul remembers my life, my passion, my blood, my wounds, my prayers, they come around this soul and gather her words, her prayers, her acts of compassion for me, her tears and her offerings, and they unite them to mine, and they bring them before my majesty to renew for me the glory of my own life. The delight of these angels is so great that reverent they listen to what this soul says and prays together with her. So with what attention and respect must the soul do these hours, thinking that the angels hang upon her lips to repeat after her what she says. Then he added, after the so many bitternesses that creatures give me, these hours are sweet little sips that souls give me. But for the many bitter sips I receive, the sweet ones are too few. Therefore, more diffusion, more diffusion. These words are from volume 11, October the 13th, 1916. October the 13th, 1916. I want to emphasize this reading because of the importance of doing the hours of the Passion. That's the book we've gifted to you for this retreat, and if most of you already have your own hours of the Passion, no doubt. However, if you read this quote, it would take half a minute to read it before you did the hours, and you realised that the same thousands upon thousands of angels that waited upon Jesus' divine humanity when he was on earth suffering are the same thousands and thousands of angels that have a special office towards you. For as you remember Jesus' life, his passion, his blood, his wounds, his prayers, these angels come around you. They gather your words, your prayers, your tears, and all your offerings, and unite them together with those same prayers, tears, and offerings of Jesus. And then they ascend to heaven and present these prayers before the throne of the Blessed Trinity. The delight of these angels is so great that reverently they listen to what you say. Do you realize thousands upon thousands of angels are listening to what you pray when you do the hours? Thousands upon thousands. And they're on your lips to gather your prayers, your kisses, your tears, and take them to heaven. So with what attention and respect must you do these hours? Thinking that the angels hang upon your very lips to repeat after you whatever you say. So this is a significant reading from volume 11. You must understand the invisible realities that are happening when you pray in the divine will. And if you even take 3 to 4 minutes to prepare yourself by reading this, and that sets your heart in the right disposition. Why are there thousands upon thousands of angels around you? Because prior to doing the hours, you have fused your little humanity and your nothingness into the divine humanity of Jesus. So immediately you do that, the same thousands upon thousands of angels that were attentive to all the needs of Jesus' humanity are now attentive to him living in you and praying in you. Because Jesus explained to Louisa that these hours came out of his heart. So they're Jesus prayers. Louisa is just the conduit for all these expressions of love that came out of his heart. And that's why thousands upon thousands of angels accompany you everywhere once you're doing your continuous acts of fusion together with Jesus. Because you become Jesus. You become a vessel for Jesus' humanity. So I'm going to read to you from volume 9 now, November the 25th. 1909, how Jesus describes the difference, but the significant difference between the passion he suffered in his human body compared to the passion of love that he suffered in his soul. Now this retreat, you might have looked at the subject headings of the talks and you might have thought, whatever has these subjects to do with the hours of the Passion? And that's what the retreat's about. It's about the interior acts of Jesus' soul while he was suffering his passion of love from his conception to his last breath on the cross. Now, most people in the church, and we're about to experience this in Lent, focus on those last 3 days of Jesus' life. But in this reading I'm about to read to you, Jesus will explain to you that that external passion that we witnessed in that great movie, The Passion of the Christ, was nothing compared to his interior passion of love. He calls it a passion of love. My daughter, men did nothing but work the skin of my humanity, while the eternal love worked all of my interior. I'll read that again. My daughter, men did nothing but work the skin of my humanity, while the eternal love worked all of my interior. So in my agony, the eternal love, the immense love, the incalculable love, the hidden love, not men, opened large wounds in me, pierced me with flaming nails, crowned me with burning thorns, made me drink boiling gall, and my humanity, unable to contain so many different martyrdoms at the same time, poured out large streams of blood. It writhed and reached the point of saying, Father, if it be possible, let this chalice pass from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Which it did not say in the rest of my passion. Jesus welcomed the cross. He welcomed the scourging. You'll read that in the hours of the Passion. He kissed the cross. But in the agony in the garden, his agony delivered to him by the passion of divine love itself was so great. The agony was concerning the loss of each and every individual soul, that he said, Father, if it is possible, let this cup, that is the cup of the loss of souls, be taken from me. He wasn't praying for himself at all. He was praying for the salvation of souls. Everything I suffered during the course of the Passion, I suffered all together in the agony, but in a more intense, more painful, more intimate way, because love penetrated deep into the marrow of my bones and into the most intimate fibres of my heart, which creatures could never reach. but love reaches everything. There is nothing that can resist it. So my first executioner was love. This is why in the course of my passion, there was not even a reproachful glance in me towards those who acted as my executioners. Not even a reproachful glance during the passion of his body. Can we say that we have not even a reproachful glance towards those who wound us, who offend us? Because I had a more cruel, more active executioner in me, divine love. And where external executioners could not reach, or a little part of me was spared, love would continue its work and spare me nothing. This happens in all souls. The first work is done by love. And once love has worked her and filled her with itself, what appears on the outside is nothing but the outpouring of the crafting that love has performed inside of her. Now I'm going to read you something from the Hours before you listen to the next song, because it's concerning the divine breath of Jesus. You might say, what has that got to do with the hours of the Passion? For every soul that went to hell or committed a sin, Jesus was suffocated and died. For every soul and for every sin, Jesus suffocated and died. He lost his breath and he lost his life. And it was divine love that resurrected him. Divine love executed him, and divine love resurrected him. He died of love for each one of you and for each one of your sins, so that he could resurrect you after each one of your sins into himself. And this is what the passion of love did. So Jesus says at the conclusion of the 11 p.m. hour, he cries out to Louisa, "Child, are you here? Have you not been a witness of my pains and of the many deaths that I suffered? Then know, O daughter, that in these 3 hours of most bitter agony, I have enclosed in myself all the lives of creatures and have suffered all their pains and their very deaths, giving to each one my own life. My agonies will sustain theirs. For their sake my suffering and death will change into a fountain of sweetness and of life. How dearly souls cost me. If only I were reciprocated. You saw that while I was dying, I began to breathe again. Those were the deaths of creatures that I felt within myself. So divine love gave Jesus its breath of life every time he died for each one of us and for each particular mortal sin. He died. So now, Michael, if you could play that song, please, and we'll listen to it, watching the face of Jesus and remembering his words.
This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. This is the air. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. Oh, this is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Yes, it is. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me. One more time, I'm desperate. And I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. I'm lost without you.
So this air that we breathe, if we don't fuse it into Jesus, this is our singular, continuous act of our life in the divine will. Is constant fusion of our acts, our human acts, which are limited. They're not eternal. They have a beginning and an end until we fuse them into Jesus. And when we fuse our breath and our breathing into Jesus' breath and breathing, we relieve him of the suffocations he suffered in the agony in the garden, and by the way, from the beginning of his life. We give life back to his suffocated breath. Now you just read and heard how he died a death for each one of you, for your own death, so that when you die, you'll do your final act of fusion of your dying into Jesus dying, and his dying, which is a divine act, will infuse itself into your dying. There's a beautiful round Louisa does in that. I can't cover everything today, so I have to. This is like the shorthand version of the hours of the Passion. The reason I'm not reading verbatim the hours and going through it in that fashion is because I want you to understand how to enter these acts of the hours of Jesus' Passion, and to see beyond the external sufferings of Jesus into what's happening inside his heart. So by the end of this retreat, that's what I really hope you will understand, and you'll do your hours so very differently. And these beautiful words of this song are very much divine will. This is the air I breathe. What does she say? Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread, your very word spoken in me. When we read the hours of the Passion and the Book of Heaven with love, this is our daily bread. This is our living Eucharist. There's another talk I'll give during this retreat about how we become a living Eucharist, a living Eucharistic host by doing these acts in the way that I'm trying to explain to you to do them. So what she says so very simply, if you play this song when you go home, find it on YouTube. This is the air I breathe, your living, what is it? Your holy presence living in me. Now that, if you're living in the divine will, you should be conscious of that all day. From the moment you wake up, even when you're asleep at night, who's breathing in you? It's the breath of God Himself, the Holy Spirit. Who's doing the breathing? You're not. I command you to stop breathing. Can you? No, because you're not doing the breathing. Therefore, you have no control over your breathing. It's God breathing His living presence in you. He's speaking to you in every breath, I love you. I love you. I love you. That's what He's saying to you all day. And then He says, I'm dying for you. But if you focus on that and return that I love you to Jesus, you resurrect Him from the many suffocations He's receiving from sinners and from other souls who just are not attentive to the breath. So I'm going to read you a little section before we move on now to the nuptial part. After the agony, in the reflection on the 11 p.m. hour, Louisa says, my Jesus was comforted by an angel. Can I say that I am like Jesus' angel, standing by Him and keeping constant vigil to comfort Him and share His affliction? Yet to be a true angel for Jesus, we must accept our sorrows as sent by Him as divine sorrows. Only then will we dare to comfort a God so afflicted. If we accept suffering only on a human level, we cannot use it to comfort this God-made man. And consequently, we cannot act as angels to Him. When Jesus sends me sorrows, this is Louisa speaking, it seems He also sends a chalice wherein I should put the fruit of these sorrows. These afflictions endured with love and resignation will then be converted into the sweetest nectar. Are you aware you're preparing a chalice of the sweetest nectar for Jesus every time you embrace the sorrows and afflictions that are sent to you on a daily basis? Are you aware of that, or do you focus on the sorrows themselves and then dive deep into why is this happening to me, why, and praying to get rid of it? But if you want to prepare a chalice of the sweetest nectar for Jesus, you will embrace these sorrows and sufferings and pains with love, like He did. And Louisa says, and then I will go to my suffering Jesus. I will offer the chalice that He sent me, and my sorrows will now turn into sweetness. Like an angel, I will bring it to His lips, that He may drink it to comfort Him, to soothe him. In every sorrow I will then say, Jesus is calling me to be an angel close to him. He wants my comfort, and for this reason he makes me share in his sorrows. Jesus, my love, in my sufferings I search for your heart to rest, and in your sufferings I wish to make reparation with mine, and in this exchange may I be your angel of consolation. So we'll just pray the song again, and now that you understand the meaning of this beautiful song, it's so simple, and learn it off by heart, and you can sing it as you're doing your chores around the house, and just play it.
This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. This is the air. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. This is my daily bread. Oh, this is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. I'm desperate for you. And I'm desperate for you, Jesus. And I'm lost without you. This is the air. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Yes, it is. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me. One more time, I'm desperate. And I'm desperate for you. And I'm lost without you. I'm lost without you.
I won't have time to read this full reading about the divine breath, but I'll give you the quote from the volumes. It's volume 36, April the 12th, 1938. And I'll read a little bit about it, because I want to move on to the next stage of the
Sorry, is that 1938 or 38?
Yeah, volume 36.
36. Oh, yes.
Louisa says, I'm always in the arms of the divine fiat, and oh, how I feel the need of his life. Now, did you notice how she said, I'm desperate for you? You know that some people might find that jarring, but Louisa, if you read the Book of Heaven, is always desperate, desperately searching for Jesus. She can't live her life without him. He is her life. And I love those words, I'm desperate for you. I'm lost without you. This is a love story. Your soul with Jesus is a love story. If you don't understand that, you're never going to get to heaven, because heaven, all that exists in heaven, is love. That's what reverberating in heaven. Even Jesus says the virtues become swallowed up in divine love and divine will. So a person who's in love, even St. Paul says this, you know, if you practice the virtues, if you obey the commandments, if you receive all the sacraments, but if you have not love, it's worthless. It's nothing. Jesus actually says, I don't even look at it. I'm not interested in that virtue you have that's so wonderful if you're not doing it with love for me. This is something I keep stressing, because everything has to be about your love for the Father's will, for Jesus suffering humanity, and for the Holy Spirit's gift of divine love in you. That's the disposition you should have in everything you do, no matter what. So Louisa says, I'm always in the arms of the divine fiat. And oh, how I feel the need for his life that breathes, palpitates, and circulates in my poor soul. Without him, I feel that everything dies for me. The light dies, the sanctity dies, the strength dies. Even the very heaven dies as if it wouldn't belong to me anymore. That's desperation. That's a soul that wants to know nothing else but the fusion of her life into God. My poor mind runs, flies in the divine will towards its centre, to rest, to leave its remains, and to take in exchange the clothing of his light, his breathing, his heartbeat, and his motion, which moves in all and gives life to all. That's what happens when you fuse your little human act that's so limited in itself into the divine will. Jesus breathes in you, palpitates in your heart, circulates in your poor little being, and he completely, like air, if you're breathing pure air, it goes into your lungs, and then from your lungs it travels and oxygenates your bloodstream and activates healthy cellular structure in your body. But the divine breathing does that in your soul. So my little daughter, daughter of my will, how beautiful it is to live in my will. For as the soul enters it, she breathes with our breathing. She beats with our heartbeat, and she moves in our motion. In communion with all, she does what the angels and saints do. Did you get that? She does what the angels and saints do, and all created things do, and makes everybody do what she is doing. Now this is incomprehensible to our human mind. But the reason this is happening is because you have fused your little act and your limited humanity into the divine humanity. And what happens then is that all the angels and all the saints and all creatures that live in Jesus, all are in that divine humanity, Jesus. And everything they are and everything they possess is contained in that act. So everything is in communion with you when you fuse your little human acts into the divine will. Everything, including God himself. But I'm going to move on to the nuptials. It's a lovely image there. Oh, you can leave that up, yeah, please. That's an image from the very famous movie called Jesus of Nazareth, of the nuptials between our Blessed Mother and Saint Joseph. And I'm just going to give you a little background of the difference between the betrothal period and the marriage. Because in Western culture, we've totally lost the meaning of marriage. When I say totally, I do mean that, except for a few people. I've even heard from the pulpit that on different occasions, it always happens on the feast of St. Joseph, chaste spouse of Mary, when they'll say this, well, Mary was engaged to Joseph, but she wasn't married to him. and therefore she was an unmarried mother. Well, of course, that's completely false, because the Jewish betrothal ceremony was a real marriage covenant. And that's why Joseph would have had to divorce Mary, wouldn't have had to divorce her if they were just casually engaged. And the seriousness of that divorce, if it was for serious reasons like fornication or something else, would involve the terrible punishment of stoning to death. So the betrothal of a bride to a husband was a serious covenant in Jewish law. And it is, in fact, in most of the First Nation peoples, very serious as well. So during the time of betrothal, the woman remains with her family. And it can take up to 1 year before the family processes her to her husband's home. And there's, in Jewish law, they process in this through the streets, and it's a big celebration. They process to his home for the consummation of the marriage. Because during those 12 months, she's preparing, and probably her family members are, the women in her family are talking to her and telling her what marriage is all about, you know, presumably. We don't usually have that advantage in our culture. And then in our culture, a long time ago, I'm old enough to remember, girls used to have a glory box. And the glory box was like preparing all these linens and things for the household. So when she got married, she had all these beautiful things to take to her new home. And the man, his part would be to procure, I remember my beautiful cousin, procure a piece of land, you know, that he might be paying off in expectation of his marriage and rearing a family and then building a home on it. So there's this exchange of gifts between the man and the woman in the preparation for the consummation. The reason I'm telling you about this is because it's highly significant in regard to the redemptive fiat and the sanctifying fiat. And a friend of mine who comes on the Zoom from Casa Luisa, and she lives in Switzerland, she told me she had an illumination about this because we've been speaking a lot about the nuptials of Mary and Joseph. And she'd researched about the Jewish tradition. And she said the man would pay what's called a bride price. And we, through women's liberation, they resented all this because it looked like the man was procuring a piece of property, for himself. In actual fact, it wasn't like that at all. The reason the man would take to her family a gift, a sizable gift, was because they were in mourning, because they were losing their beautiful daughter for the rest of her life, depending on, where he lived. Some brides go to a different country, as you know. And there was a thing called a mourning gift, mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-N-G, was the recognition by the man that the family, in a certain sense, was mourning the loss of their precious daughter. And so it was a gift of respect to the family that he was obtaining this precious jewel that they loved, their daughter. And the gift never compensated, because he was getting the better part of the deal. And this is an extraordinary thing to ponder. And so Paula and I were pondering this, and then she got this incredible illumination, and I agreed entirely with her. We spoke for 3 hours about this. And we talked about the glory box and the morning gift, and what was Joseph's morning gift, to etc., and what was Our Lady's inheritance, and we went into every detail. But the bottom line thing that struck me, she said she saw that the fiat of redemption was the betrothal period. Now, I'll explain that. Now, this is really important. The betrothal period, the bride is not living and consummating the marriage. She's waiting for the consummation. And that fits perfectly with the fiat of redemption and everything Jesus says about it. In the fiat of redemption, Jesus purchased us, his bride, the church, by shedding his precious blood. He gifted his life for us. Now, he gifted the shedding of his blood, the love of his heart, everything. He held nothing back in order to procure from the justice of the Father, because we were under the yoke, you might say, of Satan prior to the fiat of redemption, because it was only through baptism that we were freed from the contamination of original sin. So let's imagine the bride is, I've seen many movies about this, the bride is, had been captured by a foreign nation, and she's held in slavery. And the bridegroom who loves her goes to procure her back. You've seen, it actually happened to the famous and beautiful Saint Bagita of Africa. She was a slave. She had stripes all over her body where she had been whipped and abused, and in the most horrible way. And we celebrated her feast not long ago. And this Englishman, I think he was English, who had money, paid the price to buy her, to release her from slavery. And she became a servant in his house, and eventually she became a very great saint. I encourage you to look up her story. Bagita, B-H-A-G-I-T-A, Bagita. And as a servant, so this is like the stages of redemption, going back to the law of Moses when all the people of God lived under the law. Then in redemption, they're freed from that, and they receive the law of grace through the sacramental life of the church. And the precious blood of Jesus is purchasing his bride from her slavery into the freedom of the law of grace, which this man did for Bagita. But even though we were redeemed during those 2,000 years of redemption, we weren't sanctified in the fullness of the divine sanctity. We became holy through the way we lived the virtues, the way we lived the sacramental life of the church, but the sanctity of God himself was only gifted to us. Well, first it was gifted to Our Lady, but it wasn't gifted to humanity as a whole until Louisa. It became available to humanity through Louisa. And that's when I understood what Paula was saying, that the fiat of redemption was like the betrothal period because Jesus had his bride, but he could not consummate the marriage until his bride freely gave herself to him in the fiat of Our Lady, in the fiat of Louisa. Because any decent man would not consummate the relationship until she gave him permission. And that comes through our fiat. And this is the meaning of the difference between the betrothal period, where Jesus is courting us through the fiat of redemption, right? He's courting us through the sacraments and he's loving us, but he cannot consume this nuptial love that he has for the soul until she gives herself to him willingly, as Our Lady did. Be it done unto me according to thy word. So this is why Jesus says, this is a beautiful image in the movie, give me love, because this is the one and only relief that will quiet my frenzy of love. And then what does he do? He puts his image on the cloth. The word Veronica means a true image. Her actual name was something different, but she became the Veronica because the true image. But in the fiat of redemption, Jesus wants to give his image on our soul as a permanent portrait, if you like. But in the fiat of sanctification, he wants something more. He wants to possess our soul. He wants us to completely die to ourselves, and we become another Jesus, a living host for his humanity. So that is the difference. You've heard all the saints in the sanctity of the virtues speak about the imitation of Christ, right? But in the sanctity of sanctities, it's different. Jesus wants to reign in us totally. That's 24 hours a day. There's no longer you and me. It's just one. We're one, being together. So St. Paul I'll recommend Ephesians 5, chapter 5, 25 to 33, about husbands should love their wives just as Christ loved his church and sacrificed himself for her to make her holy. He made her clean by washing her in water with a form of words. That's the baptism, our baptism. But in the divine will, Jesus said, every time you fuse one of your human acts into the divine will act, it's another baptism. It's a baptism of divine love that you're being given. In the theology of the church, it's called baptism flaminis, the baptism of divine fire. Do you realize you're receiving that baptism every moment of your day, that you're fusing your human act, your human breathing, your human works that you do each day, your activities into Jesus? That you are being baptized continuously? That's why a soul who lives in possession of Jesus himself cannot sin. Because when you're in this state of constant fusion, Jesus is living in you and Jesus cannot sin. It's not you. You can sin if he's not living in you. But you cannot sin once you're in a state of constant fusion. That's why, do we have that, I want to read this quote for you. From volume 31, December the 21st, 1932. This is about the act being a wedding. This is why I'm focusing on it being a nuptial act of consummation of your wedding to Jesus. Every act you do, fused into him, is an act of consummation of yourself as a bride to your divine bridegroom. I can prove this with 1,000 quotes, but I don't have time. You just have to believe what I'm saying is true. So I'll read a short quote. One can say, this is Jesus speaking, one can say that in this exchange of wills, that's when you fuse yourself, right? I fuse my breathing into your breathing. Jesus, I fuse my heartbeats into your heartbeats. I fuse my gazing into your gazing. I fuse this work I'm doing now into your works. That's fusion, fusion, fusion. This is what happens. One can say that in this exchange of wills, in these reciprocal gifts of both parties, a wedding between the soul and God takes place. An always new and repeated wedding. Why is it always new and repeated? Because the more you repeat these acts of fusion of your life and your human acts into the divine will acts, he is growing in you. It's like in a human marriage, the more acts of love you do for one another, the more your love expands for each other. From the first love, the honeymoon stage, but then you go through having your children, you go through terrible trials, maybe one of you gets a terminal illness and the other one has to nurse her husband through that. All of these trials, what do? They expand the love. It becomes a maturer love, it becomes a more beautiful love. And the wedding ceremony becomes a true wedding of your souls together. So the two, as Jesus says, become one body. But now he's saying this on a divine dimension. What happens? That every time you fuse your human acts into the divine will act, an always new and repeated wedding takes place. Are you realizing that just one day or a few hours doing this, if you are aware that you are being loved by the Trinity all day, every day. And all of heaven is surrounding you, celebrating, which I'm going to show you a quote, what happens. Celebrating this wedding between you and God. And when there is a wedding, everyone celebrates the new spouses, and they extol their Creator, because this gift of my fiat, it is not only the gift that I make, but together with the gift I give my life. That forms the bond of inseparability in which the substance of the true wedding between the human and the divine exists. This is why Paula was the gift of illumination she got from God is so true. This fiat that we live in now, in the fiat of sanctification, is the consummation of the wedding. The fiat of redemption is the betrothal period, when Jesus purchased us back from the power of the devil. Now he is consummating his wedding with us. But not just once, every moment we fuse our acts into him. So, Louisa says in volume 10, my Jesus, you are love, you are all love, and love is what I want, love is what I desire, love is what I long for, love I supplicate and beseech you for love. Love invites me, love is my life, love enraptures my heart unto the bosom of my Lord. Of love am I inebriated, of love am I delighted. I only, and only for you, you only and only for me. Now that we are alone, let us speak of love. For pity's sake, make me understand how much you love me, because only in your heart does one understand love. And Jesus replies, do you want me to speak to you of love? Listen, my beloved. Receive these words as if Jesus is speaking to you, because he is speaking to you individually. Listen, my beloved child, my life is of love. If I breathe, I love you. If my heart beats tells you, love, love. I'm madly in love with you. All of creation speaks my love to you. If the stars twinkle, love is what they tell you. If the sun rises, it covers you with the gold of love. If it shines with all its light in its midday fullness, rays of love it sends to your heart. If the sun sets, it's saying to you that your Jesus dies of love for you. In thunder and lightning I send you love, and my hot kisses do I give to your heart. Upon the wings of the wind it is love that runs. If the waters murmur, I extend you my arms. If the leaves move, I press you to my heart. If the flower perfumes, I amuse you with my love. All of creation in mute speech says to your heart that from you I want only a life of love. Love is what I want. Love is what I desire. Love I beg from inside of my heart. I am only content if you give me love. This is volume 10, September the 28th, 1910, and February the 8th, 1911. I only read you a small section of it. It's pages long. But do you wake up in the morning and when you look at the sun rising, do you think that Jesus is rising in your heart saying, I love you, I love you, I love you? So this is the dance that Jesus does with us in our soul.
Dance with me, oh lover of my soul, to the song of all songs. Romance me, oh lover of my soul, to the song of all songs. Behold, you have come over the hills, up on the mountain. To me you have run, my beloved, you captured my heart. And dance with me, oh lover of my soul, to the song of all songs. Romance me, oh lover of my soul, to the song of all songs. With you I will go, you are my love, you are my fair one. Winter has passed and the spring time has come. Dance with me, oh lover of my soul, to the song of all songs. Romance me, oh lover of my soul, to the song of all songs. Come on and dance with me. Lover of my soul, to the song of all songs. Romance me, romance me, oh lover of my soul, to the song of all songs. Dance with me, O lover of my soul, to the song of all songs.
So, my daughter, fusing yourself in my will is the most solemn, the greatest, the most important act of your whole life. Your whole life. To fuse yourself in my will is to enter the sphere of eternity, to embrace it, to kiss it, and to receive the deposit of goods the eternal will contains. So by fusing yourself into my will, you put heaven and earth into motion. It is the new feast for the whole Imperium. So we just saw the soul dancing on this circle of the will, of the divine will, and it is a dance of the rounds. That's why I show it as a dance, because it's a circular motion led by Jesus with his bride, dancing the rounds of his life. My daughter, this circle is my eternal will, which embraces the great wheel of eternity. Everything that is inside this circle is nothing other than all my humanity did in the divine will. That's your rounds. I'll read this. Oh, I'm reading it now. That's it. You see how she's immersed in the sea. You see? The sea of the divine will in its acts. And she's rotating because that's doing her rounds. And he says here, my daughter, the souls who live in my will are the tiny little wheels that rotate within this great wheel of eternity. My will is the motion and the life of the wheel of endless eternity. So you see in that first image, Jesus is the one holding her hand, guiding her around and round. As they enter into my will to pray, to love, to operate, etc., the wheel of eternity makes them go around within its interminable circumference. And I found that I've got a few beautiful images for you, but when I found this image, I loved it because she's completely immersed. And see the circle, Jesus mentions this circle is the wheel of the main wheel. You know, in the gears of any machinery, there's the main wheel and then there's the small wheels. But it's the main wheel that causes the rotation of the small wheels. And each one of us is a small wheel. So this circle is my eternal will, which embraces the great wheel of eternity. Everything that is inside this circle is nothing other than all that my humanity did in the divine will, in order to impetrate that my will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Everything is prepared and done. There's nothing left but to open the doors and make it known, so that souls may take possession of it. When I come upon earth to redeem man, it was said about me that I would be the salvation and the ruin of many. The same will be said now, that this will of mine will be either of great sanctity, because my will is of absolute sanctity, or of the ruin of many. See, while rotating upon this circle, it is necessary to look inside of it, never outside. because inside of it there is light, knowledge, strength, and my axis help, attraction and life, so that souls may take the life of my will within themselves. Outside of it there is none of this. Souls will find darkness and will fall into the abyss. Therefore, be attentive and keep your gaze always fixed into my will, and you will find yourself with the fullness of grace of living in my will. What happens when you gaze outside the acts of the divine will?
Lose focus. They lose the focus because of distraction.
Of course, thank you, Susanna. You fall into the maze. You know what a maze is? The maze of human acts and human dramas. If you keep focusing on what these human dramas are in the world today, most of which are demonic, their origin is in hell, you are falling into the pit of the nothingness that exists in them. Therefore, I urge souls not to look at these dramas, because it has an addictive quality. Satan knows this. He knows our humours of our body. He knows we're prone to addictions. And if he thinks he can trick us by saying, well, the original temptation to Adam and Eve was, but if you eat the fruit of that tree, you're going to know all about good and evil. And when you have all this knowledge of good and evil, you'll be autonomous to God. You'll be like God, but you'll be your own God. So what happens is that same temptation of Satan in Genesis is repeated down through the centuries, particularly today, because if we think we know everything about politics, religion, whatever, we think that we're going to have the power over it. We think that we're going to be gifted the right response to these situations by more knowledge. Well, we're not going to have the right response, because in the sanctifying fiat, in every moment we fuse ourselves, we are newborn. We remain little newborns, completely innocent and totally dependent on our father and mother. This is the hardest thing to live this way, because all our education, primary and secondary education, tertiary education, is based on the premise that the more knowledge we have, the more capable we are to live in this world and find solutions to the world's problems. And this morning, in the little cottage, there was this quote. I'm going to read it to you because I was up early this morning writing it out. It was framed at the entrance to the cottage. And I loved it so much because it's related to what I was just speaking about. The paradox of our time in history is that we have taller buildings but shorter tempers, wider freeways but narrower viewpoints. We spend more but have less. We buy more but enjoy less. We have bigger houses but smaller families. We have more conveniences but less time. We have more degrees but less sense. More knowledge but less judgment. More experts yet more problems. More medicine but less wellness. We drink too much, we smoke too much, we spend too recklessly, we laugh too little, we drive too fast, we get too angry, we stay up late, we get up too tired, we read too little, we watch TV too much, and we pray too seldom. We have multiplied our possessions but reduced our values. We talk too much and we love too seldom. We hate too often. We've learned how to make a living but not a life. We're added years to our life but not life to our years. We've been all the way to the moon and back, but we have trouble crossing the street to meet a new neighbour. We've conquered outer space but not inner space. We've done larger things but not better things. We've cleaned up the air but polluted the soul. We've conquered the atom but not our prejudice. We write more but learn less. We plan but accomplish less. We've learned to rush, but not to wait. We build more computers to hold more information, to produce more copies than ever before, but we communicate less and less. These are times of fast foods and slow digestion. These are times of big Ben and smaller character. Times of steep profits and shallow relationships. These are the days of 2 incomes but more divorce. Fancier houses but broken homes. These are days of quick trips, disposable diapers, throwaway morality, one-night stands, overweight bodies and pills that do everything from cheer to quiet to kill. It's time when there is much in the show window and nothing in the stock room. A time when technology can bring this letter to you, and a time when you can choose either to share this insight or just to hit delete. Remember to spend time with your loved ones because they are not going to be around forever. Remember to say a kind word to someone who looks up to you in awe, because that little person will soon grow up and leave your side. Remember to give a warm hug to the one next to you, because that is the only treasure you can give with your heart, and it doesn't cost you a cent. Remember to say I love you to your partner and your loved ones, but most of all mean it. A kiss and an embrace will mend hurt when it comes from deep inside of you. Remember to hold hands and cherish the moment, for someday that person will not be there again. Give time to love, give time to speak, give time to share the precious thoughts in your mind. George Carrion, and that was on the entrance door wall of the cottage we're living in. And I know you know all that, but it's just lovely to hear it spoken so beautifully. So let's go to this. This is so important about music and song, because you'll say, what's this got anything to do with the Passion? Well, I'll be telling you what it has to do with the Passion. The greatest song, the Song of Songs, that was from Dance With Me, O Lover of My Soul, is a direct quote from the Song of Songs of Solomon in the Old Testament. And Solomon was a renowned lover. I mean, I was told by a Jewish Catholic friend of mine how many wives he had, and I just couldn't get my head around it. And of course, in the end, they were the cause of his demise, because he built shrines around the Temple of Jerusalem to the pagan gods that belonged to the religion of his wives. And that was the fall of Solomon. But Solomon and the Song of Songs is renowned as the great love poem of the Bible. However, what I saw in it is the greatest love song ever delivered to us is through our bridegroom, Jesus, in the Passion, in his Passion. And that's why I'm talking to you about natural love. I'm talking to you about divine love, and how divine love is affected on the earth through the Passion of Jesus. And we have to live inside of him to be able to live these same acts of his love for souls in order to bring the consummation of the divine marriage to its final completion, which is the kingdom of God on earth. And that's why this story of natural love is important, because Jesus was singing this song in his heart during his passion of love, not just on the last 3 days of his love, but on every, I've got to read that quote. So, the creation, echo of the celestial fatherland, contains music. Do you hear music when you look at creation? Can you hear that beautiful melody? I live out in nature, and here you can hear it, but when I hear all the waterfalls, cascading and the sound of the waterfalls, or listen to the breeze rustling through the trees, it's music, it's God's I love you that's running through all these sounds in nature. The royal march, the spheres, the heavens, the sun, the sea, and all possess order and perfect harmony among themselves, and they go around continuously. This order, this harmony, and this going around without ever stopping forms such admirable symphony and music that it could be said to be like the breath of the supreme fiat blowing into all created things like many musical instruments. Well, Roger here's a musician, and he plays wind instruments. And I used to play with Roger. And it requires your breath, doesn't it, Roger? To play the flute, to play the clarinet, to play the digital horn. And Jesus is comparing that with his divine breath as it breathes life into our acts, which become the musical instrument for him to breathe his life and his music. So you can be, Roger, like a flute that he's playing, and blowing into all created things like many musical instruments, and forming the most beautiful of all melodies, such that if creatures could hear it, they would remain ecstatic. Imagine one day when we see creation restored to its original glory. We're going to hear this music of the divine will in all creation. Now the kingdom of the supreme fiat will have the echo of the music of the celestial fatherland and the echo of the music of creation, the order, the harmony, and their continuous going around their creator will be such and so great that each one of their acts, words, and steps will be a distinct melody. See, one day, you don't feel it now, you don't hear that music, but one day you're going to see that every step, word, and work you fused into the divine will be played back to you as a melody. You're going to hear that melody. It's reverberating back to you the melody of the divine will. Like many different musical instruments which will receive the breath of the divine volition in such a way that everything they do will be as many distinct musical concerts which will form the joy and the continuous feast of the kingdom of the divine fiat. For your Jesus, there will be no longer any difference between remaining in the celestial fatherland and descending to stay in the midst of creatures in the kingdom of the supreme fiat upon earth. Then our work of creation will sing victory and full triumph, and we will have three kingdoms in one, symbol of the sacrosanct Trinity, because all our works carry the mark of one who created them. So one day you're going to hear this great celebration of orchestral wonder that your acts fused into the divine will have been composing on earth. Now I just want to read one little quote about how you form. There's another beautiful picture of dancing in the circle, see, of the divine will rotating on the circle. I've read that quote to you, but we can leave that image on. Doing the rounds of love in the divine will forms the Trinity in souls. Did you hear me? I didn't hear anyone gasping, because you're supposed to be gasping. Like Louisa says, while praying, I was uniting my mind to the mind of Jesus, my eyes to those of Jesus, and so on with the rest, with the intention of doing what Jesus did with his mind, his eyes, his mouth, his heart, and so forth. That's what we do. That's continuous fusion. And as it seemed that the mind of Jesus, his eyes, etc., diffused for the good of all, it seemed that I too would diffuse for the good of all, uniting and identifying myself with Jesus. Now I thought to myself, what kind of meditation is this? What kind of prayer is this? Now a lot of people think this, so, they say, well, what? Am I just going around all day saying, I fuse my mind in the mind of Jesus, I fuse my ears into... And then they suddenly realise they're not praying the way they used to pray, right? So Louisa's had this moment coming to her. What am I doing? What kind of prayer is this? I'm no longer good at anything. I'm not even capable of reflecting on something. This is volume 11, June the 12th, 1913. So she's feeling what probably you felt at some stage. And while I was thinking this, my always lovable Jesus, can I finish this quote? My always lovable Jesus said, "My daughter, what are you saying? Why are you afflicting yourself with this? Instead of afflicting yourself, you should rejoice, because when you used to meditate, and many beautiful reflections used to arise within your mind," remember those days? "You would do nothing but take from me only part of my divine qualities and virtues." Remember this, read this again and again. "Now, since the only thing left for you to do is to be able to unite and identify yourself with me, you take the whole of me. Good at nothing as you are, with me you are good at everything, because with me you want the good of everyone. And the mere desiring and wanting good produces a strength in the soul which makes her grow and settles her in the divine life. Then by uniting with me and identifying with me, you unite with my mind, producing many lives of holy thoughts in the minds of creatures. And as you unite with my eyes, you produce many lives of holy gazes in creatures. In the same way, you unite with my mouth, you give the life to the words of creatures. And if you unite to my heart, to my desires, my hands, my steps, at every heartbeat, you will give a life to desires, actions, steps, but holy lives, because I contain the creative power within me, and therefore together with me the soul creates and does whatever I do." Now here's the big finale. "Now this union with me, that's caused by your fusion. This union with me, part to part, mind to mind, heart to heart, produces in you in the highest degree the life of my will and my love. In this will the Father is formed, and in this love the Holy Spirit. And through the operating words, works, thoughts, and everything else that comes from this will and from this love, the Son is formed. And here is the Trinity in souls. So if we need to operate, it is indifferent whether we operate in the Trinity in heaven or in the Trinity within these souls on earth. This is why I keep taking everything else away from you, be they even good and holy things, to be able to give you the best and the holiest, which is I, myself, and to be able to make of you another myself, as much as it is possible for a creature. I believe you won't lament anymore, will you?" So we're going to end with this beautiful song.
I have traveled many moonless nights, cold and weary, with a babe inside, and I wonder what I've done. Holy Father, you have come and chosen me now to carry your Son. I am frightened by the load I bear in a world as cold as stone. Must I walk this path alone? Be with me now. Be with me now. Breath of heaven, hold me together. Be forever near me. Breath of heaven. Breath of heaven, lighten my darkness. Pour over me your holiness, for you are holy. Breath of heaven. Do you wonder as you watch my face if a wiser one should have had my place? But I offer all I am for the mercy of your plan. Help me be strong. Help me be. Help me. Breath of heaven, hold me together. Be forever near me. Breath of heaven. Breath of heaven, lighten my darkness. Pour over me your holiness, for you are holy. Breath of heaven, hold me together. Be forever near me. Breath of heaven. Breath of heaven, lighten my darkness. Pour over me your holiness, for you are holy. Breath of heaven. Breath of heaven. Breath of heaven.
Are there any questions? Laurie's got the microphone if anyone has any, or comments. You don't need to have a question. There might be something that came into your mind during the talk. Laurie?
No.
When I read, so loud. When I read the volumes of the Book of Heaven, Louise always talks about being in the water, and I don't see it at all that way at all. For me, it's the water is inside; it's bubbling up inside of me, and sometimes it's as though, you know, there's the whole universe is inside because it's bubbling so much, like it's like planets are walking inside of me. And I don't feel the water at all because, I mean, I don't like being wet all the time. I've got my skin around me, you know, and it really bothers me because I think, you know, what's the matter, you know, what's going on with me and what's going on with her, and I'm just trying to understand it.
Well, it's a metaphor.
Yes, I know.
So you're describing the living water inside of you. Jesus said, I am the living water. You know, anyone who is thirsty, come to me and drink. That's what you're describing, the living water bubbling inside of you. That's really what Louisa is saying. I'm in the sea of the divine will because she's immersed in it. The divine will itself is inside of her and outside of her. It's sort of both. But little by little, these are just words that describe something that's indescribable, really. So don't try to kind of analyse it too deeply.
No, I just try and think, well, you know, what's the difference, you know?
Yeah, no difference.
Am I on the right path or
yes,
what?
of course you are.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, everyone experiences it differently. This gentleman here, Laurie, just down here.
So fusing is obviously the key part to living in the divine will, right? And
It is living in it. Jesus said, fusing in my will is to live in it.
Right. It's such an abstract thing, and I've been looking at it for 10 years now, and I every time I think I'm moving forward, then I don't think I've still quite got it. So I'd be grateful for any insight that you could give about this actual fusing. Like, how do you describe it? People ask me when I'm trying to explain to somebody else what it is, and I sort of feel like I'm short of words and I'm not very effective at doing it because I'm probably not good at doing it myself.
I've got an explanation that you might not have heard on my Zoom sessions that people said helps them understand it better. When you get into your car, what's the first thing you do to ignite the engine? You turn the key. How long does it take? A split second. What happens in that split second? The whole engine is rotating, moving, you know, and you've taken one split second to ignite the engine of your car. Now, it's the same split second whether it's a Ferrari or a Maserati or an old Holden or my Honda. That split second ignites the amazing engine of a car. Do you know how, you might be a mechanic, but I don't know how the car works. But it works. What's the second step you do? You put it into gear. And then what do you do? You've missed one very important thing, Paul. Don't tell him. You've missed a very important thing in this process. Before you put your foot on the accelerator, what do you do? Before you put it into gear, what do you do? Shush! Stop.
Take off the handbrake?
Yes.
I don't do that in my car, it's automatic, but yeah.
Yeah. So you still have to take, don't you have a handbrake on your car at all?
No.
No. Oh, well, there you go. I'm driving just the old version. The thing is, this is what it means. Jesus says, if you say, I fuse myself or this act, whatever it is, into my will, you ignite the whole engine of the divine will. That's the engine being the divine will that operates in the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit by three little words. and it's equatable to our practical life. What do you do when you want to start your any engine in your home, your vacuum cleaner and that? What do? You plug it in. What do? You turn the switch on. How long does it take? Less than a second. And then your machinery operates. You usually don't think, how is it operating? You just accept it. You accept it's going to operate. Same with your car. Why wouldn't you transfer that same faith you have in the machinery that's been put together by human beings? Obviously, the divine will has given them the intelligence and the integrity to create these machines. Why wouldn't you accept that the origin of all machinery, because the universe is a magnificent mathematical genius of machinery. The planets rotate in perfect rotation in their orbits. The scientists say that if any of those planets moved even a small amount out of their rotational circuit, the whole of the planetary systems would collapse. It's a mathematical genius that formed creation. So when Jesus says, and he's the eternal word speaking, when you fuse yourself, as Louisa was doing here, she said, I was fusing my thoughts into Jesus' thoughts. I was fusing my words into his words. I was fusing my hearing into his hearing. And she's become accustomed to doing that. In all the earlier volumes, he's explaining it in more detail to her because she only had a second grade education. She can't get her head around the magnificence of what's happening just through doing this simple act. But we do it every day at every level of our life. As I said, getting in your car, switch the key. You're probably not even thinking about it when you do it. Your mind's probably on other thoughts. And then you just put your foot on the accelerator and it just goes. So fusion, interestingly, fusion is not a magical word. It's not mysterious, because fusion means infusion of one thing into another. Chemistry is all about fusion of one, what's the word I'm looking for? Substance into another. And of course electricity, if you know anything about electricity. So you're just plugging into the source of all power, which is God himself, by saying, I fuse myself into the divine will. But you have to take the handbrake off. The handbrake is your will. Your will is the only brake that prevents the divine will from operating. And the acceleration, when you put your foot on the accelerator, you can go as fast as you want, or you can pull your foot back and go as slow as you want. So that's doing your rounds. Now, as you're driving your car, you're seeing all different vistas of scenery. It's beautiful, particularly driving up here. So you're seeing a continuation of created things around you. And as in the divine will, when you enter that divine act, he shows you. People find this hard to believe, but he shows you the rounds he wants you to do. Say in this retreat we're focusing on the passion, right? So you just pick one part of the passion you want to focus on. Could be the scourging or crowning with thorns. Now you mightn't have your mind might be blank. You might think, how am I going to do a round in that? Well, just start with the book, but then let Jesus show you the depths of his interior acts. And you have to listen to him and believe he's going to show you, because when Louise asked him, she said, how am I going to do this? Because she's focusing on herself. She's focusing on her limitations. You've got to stop thinking about what you can do and you can't do, because you become nothing. Jesus operates in you and then he shows you. He steps into the driver's seat of your humanity and he takes you where he wants you to go. Does that make it a bit easier?
Yeah, I mean, it's just because it seems so mystical, I feel like what I should be doing more or something. There should be something there. Like,
That's the whole thing. You've got to think more like a child, Paul. A child. Another analogy I give is when a dad puts his little. I've done this with my kids, but my husband would put my 3-year-old son when he's on his tractor. We had a farm, and he put the 3-year-old on his knees, and the 3-year-old puts his hand on the wheel. And the 3-year-old thinks he's actually driving the tractor, but he's not, of course. Dad's changing the gears, doing all the necessary things. But he's saying, oh, he's so excited. This 3-year-old said, Dad, I'm driving the tractor, you know. That's what it's like when you do a nap. Jesus is doing all the driving, but he's making you feel like you're doing something. And he gives you the credit. This is in the book of heaven. He said, but I give to the soul the credit as if he or she did that act, when it's actually me doing it. But you get all the credit. So this is the divine bookkeeping. You do nothing except fusion, that's your part. And then he does everything else. But then you get all the credit of what he's done in you just because you gave him your humanity to operate in. So when you go to heaven, you will see all these acts as if they were yours, but they were actually him doing it. And then he gives you the merit and the credit in heaven just for doing those acts of fusion, as if you did it. Are you still confused?
no, I think you've given me a new way to look at it.
Okay, because it's not mystical. Louisa asked Jesus one day, is this mystical, Jesus? Like it's a mystical thing. No, he said it's actually real. What happens is real in heaven. It's just we can't see it until we get to that point of heaven. And then he will show us everything we've done fused into him. You can say, if you don't like the word fuse, you can say immersed. You know, you can use different words, but Louisa more often uses the word fusion. Anyone else? No, you're all perfectly clear. That's good. You don't have to understand it all. I just want to tell you this. Be very peaceful, because you don't have to understand it in order for it to happen. Okay? Yes, Juliana. Beautiful name.
Thank you so much.
Okay. When I pray, and like I'm a cleaner, so before I enter into the cleaning, I unite all my acts, but I say into the supreme will, supreme love, and supreme fiat. Is that the same as,
Perfect.
Of course, divine love, divine will?
Yes.
But just that I feel, I love divine, yeah. But when I say supreme, I feel personally, I'm raising up, in with
You're ascending
Jesus.
to heaven. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So use language that affects you more. Or the language of love. Everyone that loves on a human level, couples, each couple has their own particular favourite language of love.
Right.
So, you know, it's a personal relationship with Jesus, so your words don't matter. It's the intention that's behind the words. That's perfect fusion, what you did. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, not even the same as Louisa. You just use those words.
Yes.
You know, that's perfect, Juliana. And it's lovely because, you know, all of your acts are now fused into the one single act of God, which contains all acts.
Wonderful. Thank you kindly.
My pleasure.
Just a comment maybe on the fact that this beautiful illumination was shared with us today. It's such a blessing, isn't it, to be able to hear that somebody being given something from God and we get to share in it.
Yeah.
Such a blessing.
Well, living in the divine will is about multiplying the joy and entering the Magnificat of Our Lady when she said, "My soul magnifies the Lord." And then the question is, how can a human created being magnify the Lord? By living in the divine will, because Jesus says you double the joy of heaven, all creatures, all the created things. The joy is double. That's what you're experiencing, Sonia. You're feeling that increase of joy, which was first given through Paula, then to me, and then I'm sharing with you. And so we're multiplying the joy. Anyone else? Hello?
Sorry, I'm quite new to this, but I'm understanding it quite nicely, surprisingly.
Oh, good. That's good news. You're Cheryl's friend.
Yes.
Yeah, she's told me that you were coming. Welcome. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much. I thought that very last quote that where you summed up what we were speaking about was really very, very good. And I'd like a reference for that, so I can just reread it, please. Where are we able to, are you able to give that to us?
I'm glad you asked me, because normally I have a retreat book printed for everyone, but for reasons I don't need to go into, I couldn't get it done before the retreat. But what I'm going to do is send out the PDF on your emails when I get all the email lists, but then I will get retreat books printed, but you need to email me if you want a retreat book, so I know the numbers I need to get printed. And they're printed very beautifully with all the slides. Everything will be there in colour.
Thank you.
And like the last retreat book was this one on Divine Love. So it comes in a large A4 format, and it's all beautifully set out. And then when people go home from the retreat, they use the book as a reflection on what they've been listening to. So I am going to do that. I finished the retreat book, but I'll just print it out for you if you order it. Cheryl's got my email address.
Yeah, I think that will be amazing for all of us. Thank you.
Look, thank you. We have David here. Hands up, David. He's come all the way from New Zealand. Wow. Welcome, David. No, it's not embarrassing, David. You're one of our family, and we want to say hello and welcome that you came. He discovered me on Jenny's Zoom, and he told me he liked the way I speak slowly, and I'm a Queenslander, you know. There's all these jokes from New South Wales, you know, that Queenslanders are a bit slow and we speak slowly.
I'm from New South Wales and I've got to work with it.
And what a great privilege, David, to have you here. And also we've got Sue up the back, there she is, and Rosemary, and Sharon. Charmaine, came down from Brisbane, and we've got, Joelle and Margaret came up from Sydney, correct, Joelle? So Joelle knows me from Tuesday morning Zoom. Is there anyone else who's come from a distance?
Karen.
Sorry?
Karen from WA.
Forget Karen.
Oh, Karen, of course. Karen's going to visit us at Joseph's place for a couple of days before she flies home. And we met Karen when Michael and I were in Perth, and she hosted us in her home beautifully. And she's flown all the way from Perth. And now, Paul, where do you come from? Juliana?
I come from Sydney.
Oh, from Sydney, Paul. Really? That's amazing. Thank you. And this lady behind?
In and around Bruno.
Where do you come from?
I'm just around Bruno.
Oh, Boona. Oh, you come from Boona. That's where Mary Whitman, my friend, she's out helping in the kitchen now, comes from Boona. So she would probably, you would know Mary. Okay. So.
And Cobar, Bernie comes from Cobar.
Cobar.
Yeah.
Bernie, yeah. So it's just nice for me to let you know that, so you can make David and our visitors here from Sydney, Juliana and Paul, welcome, because they've made a big effort to get here, and we're part of the Divine Will family. When we go to heaven, we'll be known to each other as brothers and sisters. We actually belong to the royal family. Did you know that? No, I mean, I'm not joking. Jesus said when you live in the divine will, you become a king and a queen, a little king and queen. And we live in the center of the sun. This is when you live in the fourth degree. Hopefully we'll get to that stage. You live inside the center of the sun, and all the other blessed in heaven live off the reflections of these souls that live in the center of the sun in heaven. Did you know that? So it's we become part of the Holy Family of Jesus, Mary and Joseph and the Blessed Trinity and Louisa and all those who've lived in possession of the divine will. And this is the literal royal family of heaven. And Our Lady said and Jesus said, we become kings and queens. We share in the royalty of Jesus' kingship and our Blessed Mother's queenship, and they share their scepter of power with us. Just to underline that for you, to give you impetus to try and live in this fourth degree, which will be the last talk. Basically, all my talks are telling you how to live in the fourth degree. So what I've said today is how to live in the fourth degree. So there's no special magic thing about living in the fourth degree. It's what each talk will be telling you, how to live in the so-called fourth degree. But I don't like calling it the fourth degree, to be honest, because there's only one degree, and that's living in the divine will. And Jesus in volume 19 explains 4 degrees of living in the divine will, but we'll get to that in one of the other talks. So